Welcome to the Black Men Think podcast. If this is your first time here, know that the views and opinions expressed by the Black Men Think podcast are those of the Black Men Think podcast and not the individual members. With that being said, we're about to be unapologetically, undeniably black. Enjoy.
What's going on, family? Welcome to the Black Man Think podcast. I am your host, last name Good. And tonight I'm rolling dolo, right? Corey and Mo, they taking a little time off today, but I got a special guest, right? So what we do on our podcast, we like to have these conversations with black men. And sometimes those black men will reach out via social media or whatever. And, they'll have topic ideas, right? They'll have things that they want to talk about. And there's one brother, he reached out via IG, and man, he had such a compelling story. I was like, you know what? That's a great idea. I would love to sit down. Let's try to set it up, right? And so we scheduled a time, and now we're here today. And crazy thing is, I want to make sure I bring this guy on because I want to make sure I say his name right. I believe it's Soja, but I don't want to mess up his name at all. So we're gonna bring him in here in just a second. But first, before we do anything, thank you all for your patience. We see y'all coming over to the Patreon. For our Patreon family that's continued to support, we greatly appreciate you all. And we know that we took a little time off on the content, but if you're on the Patreon site, you have got episodes. So in the meantime, while we were on our hiatus, feel free to go over to our Patreon, subscribe there. You'll get bonus content. You'll get content when we take a break on the other side. Hey, we have to live life, man. And in order for us to live life, to give you this type of content, we have to take breaks from time to time. And so going forward, we're trying to plan to where we don't have such a long break. Like this break here has been a couple of weeks, maybe close to a month. And so we're going to make sure that we don't have that same type of break going forward. But if you do want to make sure that you're getting that bonus content, make sure you subscribe to our Patreon. Make sure you are included on all of that content that we have flowing on that side there. So we have episodes that we've been posting for quite some time there. We have bonus episodes from our new podcast, our old podcast, that you can get from over there too. So have a good night. That's my wife in the background. She's playing around, telling me good night. Good night, babe. All right. So we're going to bring in the homie now, and he's going to let me know if I got his name right. So I want him to correct me if I'm wrong off top. So welcome to the show, the homie Soja.
Yeah, man.
What's good, bro?
What's good, man? Yeah. You were spot on. Most people try to be like Soldier.
No.
Yeah, they try to ER, but yeah, man, it's Soldier. But my government name is Control.
Okay.
But how I came up with my name and works on and get it. One of my mentor people kind of led me just to this concept and who I am. Is his name is Brother Sunshine, and he sells like jewelry and stuff off of Canal Street in New Orleans. But Brother Sunshine, that's like part of his name. And when he asked me my name, he was like, "Nah, man, that name don't fit you." And I'm like, "What you mean?" And he was like, "Tell me about you." And he was like, "Matter of fact, don't do that. Just stay here." And I stood there probably 3-4 hours having a conversation in the cold, man. And afterwards, he was like, "Your name's Soldier." And I'm like, "What you mean?" And he was like, "Do you know what SOJA mean?" And he was like, "It's like a soybean." And I'm like, "Okay, like this man calling me a soybean, man." And he was like, "Nah, soybean symbolize growth. And then Jah and Rastafarian, Jah is God. So it's saying, so God. So all of creation, I'm constantly questioning because he knows I question everything. And so when I'm directing my last name to his Nafs is basically a soul, spiritual bonding one. So my full name means soldier, question the universe, but questioning who I am constantly through the universe.
Gotcha. That's dope, man. So you mentioned that you was from New Orleans. Now, first off, I'm from Georgia. I grew up in Macon, but I've been in Atlanta more. I'm from Atlanta at this point, bro. I've been in Atlanta longer than I've been on this on this earth, right? So here's the funny thing about New Orleans. I absolutely love visiting New Orleans. New Orleans is like a third home. The only problem that I have with New Orleans is the Saints. Like that's it. But that's the only thing that we don't agree on, right? When it comes to football, that's it. But outside of that, man, everybody that I know that lives in Atlanta loves New Orleans. We love the culture there. We love definitely love the food there. We love the people there. Y'all are very special. I'll put it like this, bro. Like, I can truly say that New Orleans is one of the few places in the world that I visited that people really have true culture there. Like, you really can
Right.
feel the culture there. It's not like a melting pot of different
Yeah.
places. It's like, no, if you're from New Orleans, bro, you're from New Orleans, and we know you from New Orleans. So
Right.
shout out to my Falcons fans, but I'm gonna say shout out to New Orleans this one time.
Nah, it's crazy, man. Like split wise, during Katrina, like we used to stay in Stone Mountain for a good bit, and
Right.
half of my family turned into like Falcons fans, and then the other
Oh
half
man.
is like Saints fans. So like my uncle, especially, like he a diehard Falcons fan. He got a motorbike painted red and black. Like he always
Okay.
got the Falcon caps on. So it's a good split of both.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. So, I want to get into your story, man, because like I was saying on the intro, you hit us up and
yeah,
you had such a compelling story, and we wanted to make sure that not only we got into more of your story, right?
right,
But we wanted to like truly tell who you are and really talk around some of the topics that you brought up, right? So,
right.
first off, give us kind of a background of who you are, like what is that you're about, number one, and then we can go from there.
All right, cool. So, yeah, man, I spent a good bit of my life like in New Orleans, but I also had an opportunity to kind of travel all over, and just like meeting people as I grew up, and just like constantly having those friends and those connections to New Orleans. Like I learned a lot of things, and I started to question a lot of things about myself as I grew older. So, and it's fortunate, but it isn't fortunate. Like my dad's been incarcerated like my entire life, right?
Mm,
And so like as I grew older, I started to realize pretty much everything I knew or everything that I constantly grew into figuring out, my dad has taught me. Behind
mm,
bars, my whole life. I'm 23 years old, and it was also saddening because before I got older and started to know who to look for and what type of questions to ask, I never had like you'll hear people all the time. Yeah, you can come to me and ask me for questions, but when the questions I came to people with, nobody had answers. So it's
okay.
like if I came to you and I'd be like, I don't want to play into capitalism because when I was young, I was already educated. I read a lot, man. Books wise, it was like that was me and my brother best friend. And I had a twin brother, so we would ask each other a lot of questions. But getting back into it, I had my pops, and I was able to write my pops, and he was right back, and we had conversations. And my pop, it's crazy, even genetically, we grew up without him having to be here. So when I come with a question, he already had the answer. But
Mm,
I'm grateful that in a sense of even though my pop was incarcerated my whole life, I still had someone to ask these questions to. And don't get me wrong, as I got older, I started having mentors that would teach me things about like how simple, like investing money or just like grooming, et cetera, et cetera. But I think about if I didn't have my pops to really influence the way I think, to be able to question everything and anybody around me, like where would I be? And so, like reflecting, like I said, I had connections of homies still in New Orleans that I see going through the same cycle, still living the same way. And I'm like, dang, man, just because I have my pop, he's not physically here, but just because I had somebody to ask the right questions to, I'm different.
right,
So
right. You say that about your pops, man, and shout out to your pops that for not allowing his situation to not um have a presence in your life, right? Because we know
most
things happen, and we don't have to get into why your father has been incarcerated. But
yeah,
what's more important is the fact that he made a effort to say that, you know what, while I might be behind these walls, I still have a responsibility, I have a duty, right?
right,
And while I might can't be there physically, I can still lend some type of a response, right, via letters, or even if you getting a chance to visit. And
right.
so I want to just take this time to just shout out your father for being there, bro, because I know that that's
Shout
not
out
a
King
hard
Dot.
thing. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
that
man.
that's not a hard thing. So, speaking on that, right, for me, I have the complete opposite
Yeah,
story of you, right? Like my father was there every step of the way. That I don't remember a time that my dad wasn't there, right? And so, I my dad was always there to answer a question, but there was a time in my life where I just wasn't really running to my dad to get questions answered,
right,
right? And so I hear your story where, even though your dad wasn't there physically, you still had the opportunity to get questions that were near and dear to you answered, right? And
Right.
so I want to kind of start from that point and just talk about that moment when you identified that you really needed life questions answered. And when your first go-to point would be your dad, and your dad wasn't there to answer that question immediately, how did you handle those type of situations?
Man, I've been through a lot. Like just growing up, man. Like I've been through a lot. I would say the first time, um, I believe me and my brothers about 16,
Mm-hmm.
15-ish, somewhere around that era. And we had money in our pocket, like
Mm.
we had money. But I remember us going into Oakwood Mall, and we had like just grabbed boo stuff out of Oakwood Mall, with just stealing it. And so after we got caught, it was the first time in a while I remember my dad wife taking us up to Angola to go see my dad.
Mm.
And we sat there, and then in my head, like the whole way there was probably like a two and a half hour drive, and the whole way we driving, I'm just thinking like, man, my dad's gonna be disappointed. My dad's this, my dad's
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
But my dad kind of like put into perspective, was like, we never talked about this. And
Mm.
it's like my dad response to every single thing is like he knew it was gonna happen, or he knew that I have to mentally prepare myself, because I know that it's something that in the form of it's gonna be a disappointment, but I can't show them that. So because
Wow.
ultimately, maybe my dad, and this we never talked about, because it's always that certain level of like that masculine shield that some, even with your father, you can't break down. That he was like, maybe I'm a big disappointment to my kids since I'm here. So it was just
Mm.
like his response to that was just, I knew it was gonna happen, but how can we make sure it don't happen again? And
Wow.
his
Wow.
response was totally, completely different from my mom. And my mom took all the stuff out of our room. Man, they lit it. Man, I promise you, me and my brother had a pillow, a sheet,
Yeah.
some Adidas slides, and a bouncy ball. And I remember we playing back and forth. And like I expected the disappointment from my mom, but my dad, I
Right.
could not picture how he would approach it. And I took that in, and I knew that was important, because I'm like, cool. Now I have a son. So it's like my response to everything he does is how my dad handled it. And I got to think
Mm.
ahead, and I got to think of, if I was in that situation, how would I react? And so that was the moment, one of the first pivotal moments, like, I need this man in my life.
Wow. Wow. Man, I love hearing stories like that, bro, because it's like your dad almost, he realized that, you know what? It's almost like he put on himself to know that because I'm not there, my son is going to deal with some things that he probably wouldn't have to deal with if I was there. So instead of me lashing out,
Right,
let me almost meet him where he is, right? And I think
right,
that's a super important thing, because as kids, man, we're gonna mess up, bro. Like you said, you had money in your pocket and you still was stealing, and a lot
right,
of that has to do with, of course, being with the wrong crowds, or even being with some of the right crowds, and everybody just in your crowd, you're just doing the wrong thing, right? Like
right,
I can say I have two homeboys that we still talk to this day, that we did some things that at the age that we are now we might not be proud of, but
right.
we all came from good families, bro. Like, we both
Yeah,
had both parents in our lives. We both, like, all of us had opportunities that other people around us didn't have, and we still did some things that we necessarily are not proud of, right?
right,
Um, but I want to go to how you, when you reached out to us and you were just talking about um how you use this podcast as kind of like a tool to help you, right? and
right,
and I want to give a shout out to you, bro, because, like, while we understand that does happen, and we appreciate when people reach out and let us know, it's something that in the back of our mind we knew that we wanted that to be the outcome, but we don't take for granted when it happens, right? And
right.
people let us know that, hey, man, we are listening to you guys and we appreciate being a voice for us, right? And we understand that, man, you're young, black. The world don't look at us the way that we present ourselves on this podcast. The world looks at us as one way, and this is how it's going to happen. And when you present something else,
Mhm.
it's like an eye opener for everyone. So thank you for giving us those those words, man, because we don't take that lightly. So I just wanted to publicly thank you for that.
I appreciate y'all, man. Like I said, like just reflecting on it. I think about all the guy friends I've had in the city that I traveled with that didn't have that pop. So for a lot
Mm-hmm.
of people that I know listen to y'all that this podcast is like, this is the pop. This is the guy. This is like I was grateful. My pop taught me a lot about simple structures. And like how you said, the way we view, my pops always taught me guns and drugs, stay away from. If you keep yourself occupied and you know how to make your hustle work for yourself, you're naturally stay away from those things. My dad taught
Right,
me
right.
about always working for myself, always being educated, always being one step ahead, always treating a woman like a queen, or those things that if I preach to somebody my age now, man, they be looking at me like, man, like, what is you talking about?
Man, one thing I have learned though, bro, is that while people may not be ready to hear the message, you have to just
Yeah,
give it to them because it's
agreed.
just you're just watering a seed that they'll be able to use later on, man. It's not really up to you to determine when somebody's going to need that information that you give them. You just got to give it
Yeah,
willingly, and hopefully they use it before it's too late, right? Like
right,
hopefully they're not in a bad situation where they're thinking back, man, I wish I would have did this, I wish I would have did that, and more so they catch it before that time period.
right.
Specifically to what you messaged me about, man, you said, and I'm going to read what you said. You was like, the disconnect of practical knowledge and information of older men from older black men to young. I say this because I spend a lot of time looking for mentors that would be able to teach me more, and how for a common black boy, the men that are around or look up to are learning, and maybe ideas to combat that stigma, right? So I want
Yeah,
to I want to pivot to that part of the conversation.
cool, cool. Um,
And yeah, go ahead. You want to expound on that point?
Yeah, man. So like, and just even like talking to my pops, like he was a product of this too, right? So
Mm-hmm.
like a lot of his knowledge he accumulated, I'm more than sure, was why he incarcerated. But we like yesterday, I was just telling him that I was going through like a mental season, and we kind of went to just a bunch of things talking about. But one thing my pop was saying that right after Katrina, his dad built a house and did so much stuff to the house, right? Everything that my pops did not know his father was capable of, carpentry or building a
Oh,
roof,
right,
foundation, et cetera, et
right.
cetera. And my pops was saying that um, part of it is on him because he didn't ask those questions. He didn't go there and was like, hey, can you teach me this, and this? But it was also on his pops because he was like, let me show you this, and this. And so like, by my pops not physically being here, he can give me all the knowledge he wants to. But it's like, I can bring you to the water holes, right? Boom. And I can
Right.
tell you what the water's for. But it's like, okay, I'm still gonna have questions. If I'm thinking more deep, I'm like, okay, how can this water benefit me? You bring me to the water. You saying the water is good, but how can it benefit me? So once I started getting into the state of mind of like, okay, something simple like this, I wanted to buy some land, right? And I had no concept of like how to buy land. It was foreign to
Right.
me. And so like when I would go to like men who I thought were successful, in quotation, man, I hold my hand up because
Right,
we
right,
even,
right.
we even have the stigma in the black community of what's successful. And you guys on the podcast, in my opinion, successful, man. Like I'm engaged and I'm 23 years old. And I only look at my wife like she the only thing. And when people hear that, like, you young, you live. And I'm like, who's to say that mentally I could be 30 years old? It's possible.
Yeah, yeah,
If I
yeah.
know what I want, how can you tell me just because of my age is something that I need to buy into? But regressing back into your conversation, so it became to a point where like I started having questions about a lot of things, man. And then the people who I thought had the answers didn't have the answers. And then
Mm,
I would hear all the time, just in numerous amounts of rooms and just in different environments, oh, these youngsters don't want to learn this, these youngsters want to learn that. But if a youngster comes to you, how can you teach them? Like, what do you
wow,
have to teach them? You can
wow.
you can sit here and say, y'all sag and the music y'all listen to is derogatory and y'all don't know how to make money. But if I come to you, can you teach me how to make a dollar? Because you working for the same man I'm working for. You
Hmm.
live in the same justice I'm living through, just a different era. So
So, man, you said a lot there, right? And,
yeah,
and and okay, so I'll put myself in it, right?
right,
And here's what I had to realize, and I realized it at a I think I realized it at somewhat of a younger age, right? I'm 38, right?
right,
And so I think maybe in my late 20s this is when I really realized it. Now everything is cyclical, right?
right,
So the things that, and you have to catch yourself, because the older you get, man, the more you'll start saying and thing, you kind of get those vibes of not understanding the youth. And I realized that, man, the youth speak a different language than I do. Right now,
Right.
I'm unique in the space to where I remember how things were pre-technology, and I remember how things are post-technology. I kind of found I'm in that sweet spot of, I remember when there was like, I had to put in a CD-ROM to get internet, and I know what it feels like to have all internet in the palm of my hand on my phone, right? So I
Right.
know those distinct differences. But I had to come to grips with understanding that, man, the day that you stop trying to learn is the day that you're gonna fail. So I
Right.
don't care if it's learning from anybody. I learned from my 2-year-old daughter. I learned from my 4-year-old daughter. I
Yeah.
learned from any, and I'm learning from you tonight. You know what I mean? Like, and I think
Right.
that's the number one part. Be open and willing to learn. The other
No
thing that
doubt.
I had to learn is that, man, sometimes you just got to get in some different circles,
Yeah.
right? Like, some circles, they don't necessarily run their course, but the learning potential in that circle can dwindle,
No
right?
doubt.
And so sometimes you got to get into another circle so you can bring some new information to your old circle. And that's one thing that I looked up one day, bro. I got a music background, right? So
Yeah.
I'm music production, engineering, DJing, all pretty much all thing music. That's the background that I come from.
Right.
But I looked up one day, and everybody that I knew either did music, it was all music. Everybody around me in some
Right.
capacity was on the music tip, and I was just like, yo, bro, like, I'm selling myself short.
Yeah.
So I had to find something else. And that's something else, if you listen to the podcast, I started playing golf, right? So
Yeah.
me playing golf, that started opening up conversations, because I started meeting different people. So I wasn't just meeting people that were trying to have a publishing conversation with me,
I feel
right?
that.
I started listening to people who were like, they're software engineers. So now I'm like, yo, so like, what all you do with your job? Okay,
Yeah.
how you do this? And while it may be small pieces of information, those small pieces of information I can take back to my other circles, right? Like,
Agreed.
my crew, my main crew, the fellas that's on this podcast, we all are in different spheres of influence. So that's how we're able to stay so sharp. But outside
Right.
of that circle, everything was so one dimensional. So I had to start opening things up, and learning from different people. So I would say, man, for that's the best advice I can give anybody. Number one, check your circle, see what
Right.
you are learning in your circle. And if you're not learning in your circle, I'm not saying you got to like cancel that circle and say, oh, it's over with. But you might
Right.
have to step back and go and look in another circle and start learning, so you can bring back information to this circle,
Yeah.
your core circle, because you'll be surprised. You start, like, for example, you start talking real estate, and if nobody in your circle knows about real estate, then guess
Right.
what? You become the source of information for your circle,
Right.
because you learn real estate somewhere else. So now I can start telling them, like, yo, we should start looking into blah, blah, blah. And now they're looking around like, yo, I ain't never think about it like that. So now you become the source for that circle. And now they can go out and start telling other people about it. And the cycle continues. And now we're growing as opposed to regressing, man. So
Right.
that's the biggest thing I would think, man. Find a circle that you can continue to learn in.
Yeah. I feel that, man. Like, just touching back when you said, especially like just learning from anybody. I think that was also just um my way. And it's a word for it. My brother used it a lot. Separate deputies, and you
Mm,
basically learn about everything going around you and just your past. Man, we used to be at the bus stop late at night, catching the bus home. Y'all used to have conversation with crackheads, like anybody, like homeless people. And for
yeah,
me, people used to look at me crazy, but yo, they failed. They're already in a place where I'm trying not to be. And so like
100%.
by me not having somebody who I can go to ask these questions, I'm like, let me just go ask somebody over the field. So I'm sitting there having conversations with these type of people. But more
Bingo.
so about the circle, just growing up, man, it was always me and my brother. Like, that's my twin brother. So it was like
Hmm.
he had his back, he had my back, I had his back. And like anything that he learned, he teaching me, and anything I'm learning is vice versa. But when we would split out into our friend groups, and then like especially that's why I said about being my age, that's how I started to figure out. It's like I get this concept that when I'm around like a lot of people my age, that I know it all. I know a lot. You see what I'm saying? And it's not even that anymore. It's like things that are common sense aren't even common sense anymore. Like people will be like, yo, how you so smart? How you know this? I'm like, read, yo. Or just
Right,
just
right,
ask,
right.
like you see what I'm
Yeah,
saying? And you don't even have to read, yo. Like you can listen to podcasts, you can listen to audiobooks, and so that's all the mechanisms and the things I had to pick up when I didn't have somebody to go to. And so
right,
like
right.
having that friend group, I say like, man, you mad lucky. But I started playing tennis maybe about a year ago. That's how I symbolize and just connect with you playing golf. But like when I would play tennis, man, I was always the only black kid on the tennis court. And I was
Yeah,
good, man. Like I'm good.
yeah.
But it's like I would start hearing these people talk about sitting down on bricks. Yeah, man, I'm gonna take out life insurance policy and I'm gonna take this trip, put it towards my house. And I'm like, cool. And then so like I start asking questions about that. So we most definitely relate. And that's why I love y'all podcast, man, because it's like y'all the guidance and y'all like a representation of my life and self-reflective. So when I'm listening to podcasts, I'm like, yeah, I did that too, man. So that's how
Mm-hmm.
I'm learning. That's how I'm operating about it. So I think that also for me, just being in the podcast, sometimes I'm starting to realize that you don't always need somebody physically there, the OG guidance. Because again,
Right,
that
right.
OG, just because he's older, an older guy, don't mean he has that same knowledge. He don't have that same curiosity, or he has that same idea to want to know or teach you. So
Yeah, man. That's you spot on with all of that, bro. Like that's something you said that really touched me was just like speaking to the homeless or the people that are considered the outcast or the down bad people, right?
yeah,
Because they've already failed.
right,
You know, that's huge, man. Because you're so right, bro. Like, they've already failed, and I guarantee when you sit down and talk to them, they already can give you so much because nobody wants to talk to them. So they're so full of information that they're willing to
right,
give, but because of who they are, people tend to kind of fall back and not really want to engage with them, man. And I can tell you, you made me think about there's a guy that by the name of Carl, and anybody that is on Metropolitan, I'm talking about in Atlanta, you
yeah,
know Carl. Carl has been under the bridge forever, right? And
right,
one day, man, I was out doing a run, and I just stopped and I just like I talked to him for like probably about like 3 or 5 minutes, bro, and just
yeah,
I can tell that he had been going through a lot, but also he was like, "Man, bro, no, don't nobody stop and talk to me. Everybody blowing their horn and yelling."
right,
And so he was just so shocked that somebody talked to him.
right,
Everybody was trying to avoid him. And the only, he didn't I can tell he was dealing with a lot of mental issues, but
yeah,
he did lay one gem on me. He was just like, "Man, no matter where you are in this world, you are somebody to someone." And I
right,
was just like, man, I don't even think he understood what he said. But, at that time, I was just like, probably like a very low point in my life. Like I was out here hustling, trying to make a dollar.
yeah,
And, you know, nothing was really clicking for me, right? Like I had
right,
got fired from a job. So I was just like literally trying to hustle these beats, trying to sell, any odds ends, what I could do to pay rent.
right,
I'm months behind on rent from my partner. And he was just like what he said that it just clicked for me. I was just like, yo, no matter how bad that you might think your situation is, there is somebody that like you mean the world to.
right,
You know what I mean? And so you just have to really forget about how bad things are and kind of change your mindset and look at the good and everything, bro. Because while you might be somebody that's down and out and you don't have all the physical things that everybody else around you have, like, bro,
right.
you literally are breathing. And while that might seem so, like a small thing,
So
it's just like,
micro to people, yeah,
yeah, bro, like you're out here, you're running.
right,
You know what I'm saying? Like you're running, and there's people out here who wish that they can just run 1 yard and you're
yeah,
running a mile. You know what I'm saying? And so
yeah.
it's so many things that you have to just be grateful for that we take for granted because we're in this pursuit of trying to, get
The
this.
capitalistic
Yeah, buddy.
social accepting mindset, man. Like I tell you, like it's simple. You kind of touched on it, and he kind of touched on it at the same time. But also, you can be everything and nothing at the same time. You see what I'm saying?
100%. 100%.
Like everything that matter. It even knowledge, man. Like half of the stuff we read, man, it only has value that we put value to it. And the
Hmm.
moment you take value away, just like a dollar, it don't mean nothing. So for you, you have to find that inner peace and figure out what works for you, man. Like just like the past year, man, I did like a lot of self-reflecting, man. I was like reverting to like this minimum kick, trying to realize what I needed, what I didn't need it. And
Right.
it constantly, like, the more I got rid of stuff just sitting around, just sitting there, man, it cleared my mind. And just through that, I was like, man, half of this don't matter. So then it allowed me, I started valuing family more. And I started calling my family more on Sundays, checking up on them, like, hey, what's up? Like things I would never do and people don't expect at my age. But it's
Right.
like when you have that clutter, when you push yourself away from all this social acceptance and capitalism, this stuff that really don't matter, man, you can see clear. And so
Right.
that's the perception I get. Like a lot of those people are, and then a lot of people that are homeless, man, or just like down and out, choose to live their way, man. They want that
Mm.
freedom. They don't value playing into the system of this everyday rat race cycle. So you got to kind of understand what works for you and what you are. When you pinning your acceptance in certain visuals on the other people, it don't work as them. That's not you. So
Yeah. No, that's real. That's real. That's look, bro, you opened my eyes to some stuff, man, and I for one can appreciate this conversation, right?
yeah,
We're gonna turn to, well, first off, before we get, we're gonna go to our Ask a Black Man segment where we have questions that come in from our audience.
all right.
Um, but I'll turn it on you, and I'll have you, like, is there a question that you want to ask me that I can answer for our audience, as opposed to going to questions that people send in?
Let's see.
And it could be anything. Like, it don't have to be any, it don't have to be what we talked about tonight. It can be anything. There's nothing that's off topic. Whatever's on your mind that you want to ask, you can ask, and I'll answer it to the best of my ability.
Let's see. Okay, cool. Uh, as a black man, what is something that you can see that symbolizes us? Because I read this book. It's called "Who's Afraid of Post Blackness," and they basically talk about the concept of like just being black in general is so
Mm,
widespread, and certain people fall into this formality of like quote unquote extreme blackness or something like the kicks of Malcolm X, right? And that's like certain black masculine hypes, and then you have certain men that are just like a humanistic approach, and they only care about a human beings as a whole. But I
right.
would say just what do you feel is the representation of a black man?
Man, let me think about that's I'm gonna say what I think that can really represent a black man. And I'm gonna make this a very blanket thing, because I think it's because we're not a monolith, and we have so many different layers to us, bro.
Right,
I think that the one thing that truly symbolizes a black man is art.
right,
And the reason why I say that is because art is not defined. Art is defined in so many different ways, right? Like, art can
right,
be, I can take a pen and paper and do a doodle, and that's art,
right,
right? I can do something where I'm taking different pieces of paper, artwork, vinyl, all of these things, and put it on a canvas, and that's artwork, right?
right.
I could I can talk, and that can be art. I can write, and that can be. So it's just like, for me, when I think about us, what really symbolizes us as a black man is the fact that, man, we are limitless.
Yeah,
We're limitless, right?
yeah,
We can do anything we legit put our mind to. And I think the minute that we realize that, and just like with art itself, right? I use the example of a popular, like, Basquiat, right?
yeah.
When Basquiat first was out here
Good. Shout out to
out here
Boston, one of my
painting.
favorite artists.
Hey, there you go, there you go. But when Basquiat was first out here, he didn't get that attention because
Right,
people, it, people may have not. I'll say people didn't understand it. That's really
right,
what it was, right? And that's how it is a lot of times for us as black men. Sometimes we're looked at a certain way because people don't understand us.
right,
It's the way that how I can go in the room with five white guys, and I can have a conversation with them, and they might understand what I'm talking about, but I can get in the room with five black guys, and we don't have to say nothing, and
right,
we know exactly what we're talking about, right?
right.
It's because that relatability is that who we are by nature, the way that how we are connected in a different way, that we can do whatever we want to do. But I think art is really that thing to me that truly defines who we are, because you may not know who we are today,
Right.
but if you let us sit there long enough, we're gonna show our worth, we're gonna show our value, we're gonna show that we ain't to be messed with. We're gonna
Yeah.
show all of those things. And at the end of the day, you're gonna either learn to love us,
Right.
or you're gonna have to learn to deal with us, because we're not going anywhere. We're here.
Agreed.
And so that's what it is, man. That was a great question, by the way, bro. Very good question. Like
Appreciate it, man.
that was solid. That was solid. I thought I was gonna have to. I was like, yeah, but yeah, that was a good question. Great question.
Yeah,
Great
nah,
question.
that kind of came up with, I journaled it, and for me, you kind of touched on it a lot, but just like kind of answering my own question, something that I wrote and kind of evoked and thought, was that just expression in
Mm-hmm.
general, because something that's something that just away from all, the way you walk into a room, the way you vocalize, when you think about music, if you think about the way you cook, the expression that leads into culture, and our
Right.
culture is what makes us a black man. If you think about something it's sports, the way we express ourselves
Right.
and the dominant physique, the presence of it, is still the way we express, and that's what symbolizes a black man. So I think the expression of how we articulate it, was it physically, mentally, artistically, as a whole, is what kind of makes us us. And I think
Right.
that, man, it's amazing. It's amazing, man.
Yeah, yeah. Well, look, bro, I appreciate you, man, because this was a great conversation. I learned a lot, and I think our audience is also going to take a lot away from this conversation. So before
No
we get
doubt.
out of here, tell the people how can they connect with you if they want to have a conversation with you, your socials, all of that, and
Man,
also I think what you do something. You're in the arts too, bro. Like I can
yeah,
tell that you're in
man.
the arts. So like, tell the people how they can connect with you.
Man, so you can follow me on Instagram at Save Soja, SAVESOJA ____. But yeah, man, I pretty much paint, man. I'm into like teaching myself carpentry. Like I made like tables.
Dope.
So I'm trying in the works of that, and then the brand is gonna be called Odell. So Ali Design Interior Furniture. But I try not to limit myself, man. Like to be honest with you, like I'm into music, man. Like I could flow well. Like I could paint. Is just I'm not trying to limit that. And it just growing up that way, just what brought us here as a whole, man, is like I had all these different expressions, and I was trying to
Mm-hmm.
learn how to channel it, and I had nobody to ask those questions of how to channel it. So I appreciate y'all for allowing me to express that. And just if
100%.
anybody had that same thought, man, they could hear and understand how I felt, that it's somebody out there that's thinking like me. So,
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, bro, thank you for your time, man. We definitely gonna stay connected, bro, because I just like being around like-minded people.
no doubt.
So with that being said, we appreciate y'all for tuning into the Black Man Think podcast. We're coming back, man. We're gearing up season 3. We had to take a little break. I know, yeah,
Yeah,
we getting the DMs. Y'all are like, where y'all at? Like, look, bro, we gotta live. We are black men with families and lives and all this stuff, and so we had to take a break. We needed a break, and but we are putting some plans in place where we don't have to take breaks like this anymore. So thank y'all for tuning in. Thank y'all for um, sticking with us. Once again, make sure y'all subscribe to the Patreon if you want some bonus content. We are more consistent on the Patreon side, right? But if you want some bonus content, you want to be able to talk with us a little more one-on-one, that's the place to do it. So make sure you hit the link in our bio there and subscribe to our Patreon account. We got a couple of different levels there that'll fit however you want, what's best for you. So with that being said, man, we'll see y'all next week. I gotta find another sign off, but we'll see y'all next week. That's what we got. That's what we got.
yeah.
The Black Men Think Podcast.